Good evening, Hawaii. Welcome to another segment of Bring the World Home, a production of the Return Peace Corps Volunteers of Hawaii. Each week we visit with a volunteer who has returned from service somewhere in one of the 192 countries that Peace Corps services around the world. We explore the type of work that a volunteer did overseas, the impact that they might have had on the host country, and how their services translated back to their home in the United States. Today we have Doug Long with us again. We just finished another program with Doug, and we had some more information that we wanted to share. Welcome back, Doug. We're glad you could help us try to understand a few things about the country that you served in, Lesotho in southern Africa. Doug was a volunteer in Swaziland in 1992-93, and then re-upped, went back into the Peace Corps in Lesotho in 2003 to 2005, and just returned to Hawaii several months ago.
About 2 months.
We've got, anyways, welcome. And,
Thank you.
We have a lot more information to cover. In our program, our previous program with you, we had discussed your work with HIV and AIDS related orphans. And there was a lot of questions left in my mind that I wanted to gather some more information and share with our viewers. One of the issues that you were talking about was the fact that that we didn't really get to cover was what are the activities that these orphans are exposed to or are able to interface with. Start by please just giving us a little background on the where the orphans are, what are their age, how do they come to be orphans, and then lead us down the garden path as to what transpired. What was the work that you were doing, please?
Okay. I was working peripherally with AIDS and orphans related activities. My primary assignment was teaching in a vocational institute, but I also served as the Peace Corps representative with the District AIDS Task Force. And the District AIDS Task Force dealt with both HIV/AIDS related issues and OVC, orphans and vulnerable children. So when they talk about orphans and vulnerable children in these countries, it isn't just necessarily orphans. There's a lot of children with a single parent or with both parents, but maybe the two parents have disabilities. So a lot of these children, even though they have their parents, they might be in just as desperate condition as other orphans.
Hence the vulnerability.
Hence the vulnerability. So it's not just orphans, it's orphans and vulnerable children. You hear it all over in developing countries, the OVC. Primarily, the creator of the orphans is the AIDS pandemic. But this is also in some of these developing countries. Tuberculosis is also a big issue, as well as malaria. Mm-hmm. So it's not solely with HIV and AIDS, but it was certainly the HIV and AIDS was the thing that put it over the top. The
largest contributing factor.
Yeah, the number of orphans in a country. Lesotho itself, it's a country of maybe the size of Hawaii. It's a relatively small country, and there's probably 90,000 orphans in the country, and of a population of certainly less than 2 million. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of orphans. Once the parents pass away, there may be family members, extended family members that take care of the children, but with the numbers of children that are being orphaned nowadays, those resources are really being stretched. So on occasion there are children that are left with absolutely no support.
And then when you say the numbers, give us an idea of what it is in Lesotho, and it's my understanding from some research that the numbers in Lesotho are reflective of many countries now in Africa, let's say on a percentage-wise, and probably increasing in other parts of the world, Asia in particular. Mm-hmm. What are the numbers, roughly?
It's pretty incredible. If you go to a primary school, the number of orphans is probably approaching 20% of the children that are enrolled in school are orphan children, either lost one parent or both parents.
Okay.
You know, I asked one of the teachers one time to, you know, get some orphans together at this community garden that they were working on with the orphans, you know, and I went to take a picture, and I was shocked because, you know, I expected maybe to see 20 kids maybe, and there was about 60 kids, you know, that came that were working in this orphan, and they're just within a short walking distance from where this community garden was, so it's pretty staggering.
And again, this is not just numbers derived from AIDS or HIV-related deaths and illness, but across the board. And in many countries, the situation with children and their vulnerability is something that I think is concern to a lot of people around the world. Your work there as a volunteer in education, obviously you have an opportunity to impact these children in some way, shape, or form. Do you see that as a beneficial role that Peace Corps plays and Peace Corps volunteers play and would increasingly play around the world? Or in Africa, if you don't want to speak to the whole world.
As a volunteer, you know, all volunteers are secondary, whether it's the primary project, working with AIDS and orphans-related activities, or if they're other assignments like I was teaching in a vocational institute. All Peace Corps volunteers serving now have a secondary goal of working on AIDS and orphan-related issues. So every Peace Corps volunteer, you know, serving right now at its one level or another is working on HIV and AIDS-related issues, either through, you know, education or, you know, other support mechanisms, psychological support, you know, sports-type activities, anything that would, you know, help these children, you know, rebuild their sense of security. You know, a lot of these children are, you know, just all different ages, and maybe, you know, when they lose the parents, it could be within a relatively short amount of time. It could, you know, they maybe lose both of them in 1 year.
Yes.
You know, so you know, for a child that is, you know, early teens or, you know, or whatever, you know, to go through, it's not just the trauma of losing the parent, it's the trauma of the time before that of dealing with a sick person that is
Certainly.
rapidly shriveling and dying.
Before their eyes, and it's obviously is very traumatic for anybody to go through that. And so what are these children's prospects? What are the community institutions that are in place in Lesotho now, and perhaps other places, Swaziland, Botswana, etc., that you might be familiar with, that are able to give them some support? And are they able to give them direction in addition to support? Are they able to provide some kind of hope for the future for these vulnerable children?
There's support for the orphans on a lot of different levels. You know, government involvement, you know, probably the biggest support that the orphans get from the government is free education, and they get support in the way of school supplies, and, you know, so that would be their notebooks and pens and pencils, so those type of supplies. Occasionally school uniforms, you know, may be provided, you know, so to try and, you know, and keep these kids in school, because it'd be real easy for them just to stop going to school and not receive any education. So the biggest contribution the government makes is to, you know, to provide free education to try and keep the, you know, the orphans in school. The community involvement would be, you know, looking over the health and well-being of the child, so trying to make sure that the child has a, you know, some type of living environment that is stable, that they can live in. And that's not real structured. That's pretty unstructured activity. You know, a lot of it's going to depend on whether or not the child, or if there's somebody in the community that's willing to take this child in or look after the child. Unfortunately, you know, that doesn't always happen. Or, you know, that maybe a family will take in a, you know, a orphan or vulnerable child. They have other children in their family, and they treat their children and the orphan children different. So the orphan child, you know, a lot of times, and I'm speaking of, you know, just my knowledge of Lesotho, would end up being not a slave, but the errand child.
Uh-huh.
You know, that would be the child that would be going on.
The indentured servant.
The indentured servant.
Uh-huh.
The child that's going to be, you know, working more in the fields, is going to be, you know, taking care of the cattle more. The one that's going to be going to fetch water more. The one that's going to be doing more of the washing. And washing in developing country is not putting your clothes in a washing machine and taking them out of the washing machine and putting them in the dryer.
Very labor intensive.
Very labor intensive. It's all hand scrubbing. And besides the hand scrubbing, it might be taking clothes down to some type of water point, which would be a stream or a river that might be 15 or 20 minutes or half hour away. So you're carrying these dry clothes down, washing, and then bringing these wet clothes back to, you know, to dry. So, you know, washing the clothes is, you know, maybe a half-day event.
Yeah.
So it's time-consuming.
One of the aspects that we touched on in our last discussion, our previous discussion, was the stigma associated with these. In school, in the educational process that these children are provided, is there an effort made to overcome the cultural stigma that, the stigma that comes through the culture? I mean, where I'm going with this is, here's a huge segment of the population that's ill or exposed to the illness. You mentioned previously that initially there was a lot of denial going on culturally, that AIDS was, you know, a pandemic. Is there an effort, is there an official effort, an institutionalized effort to try and change population's attitude towards people who have AIDS, who are survivors of an AIDS family, an AIDS-infected family?
UNAIDS, their focus or their theme for each year changes. So actually the theme for last year was discrimination.
Okay.
So that was the whole focus of the worldwide UNAIDS campaign last year. I think this year the focus is on you know, mothers and children, mother-to-child transmission of HIV and AIDS. So yeah, there was a full year focus on you know, discrimination last year through UNAIDS, and how this reaches the community is UNAIDS will sponsor workshops and activities and educational seminars at kind of at country level, district level, and also community level. A lot of the bigger organizations try to work more with training of trainers. So this is where the big institutions come in. Is you know, they'll have trainings, you know, in a larger city type atmosphere, and they'll bring in, you know, people from the communities. Then the people from the communities are expected to take this message back to the village level, and you know, so to you know, make a difference. You know, make some improvements within the, you know, the situation, both with you know, the AIDS, you know, the home-based care and orphan situation within the communities.
And again, in our last discussion, the previous program, you touched on the fact that the opportunity the infrastructure to deliver support and is sorely lacking. Is that the case? And how can the international community and Peace Corps bring more development of that kind of infrastructure that'll is able to deliver something worthwhile?
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a huge problem. It seems to me like if you're, you know, it's like pounding a nail one place and a board pops up at the other end almost. It seems like. You're very close to it, and you take a proactive approach to your work in Peace Corps. Do you think that this approach is valid?
What they talk about is stakeholders, and stakeholders would be the people that are directly involved with the situation, the pandemic, whatever it is. So there's a lot of stakeholders. You know, Peace Corps would be a stakeholder. UNAIDS would be a stakeholder. UNDP money generated and money donated through Global Fund. But then you also have the national government, you have at the district level, you have local government, community leaders. So the problem is bringing all these people together so everybody knows what everybody else is doing, and so things are not duplicated and replicated, and there are not people falling through the holes. And that's a real challenge, because the communication, it certainly isn't ideal. And there's only so much that the international organizations can do independently. They can come into a country and they can see things that they think should be done, but they can't dictate to the country, well, this is what you need to do.
Exactly.
They have to, be culturally sensitive wherever they go into a country to make sure that things that they're proposing are acceptable to the country. But then the second part is that they also need to sell this program or sell these ideas to the local government. So the local government at some point in time becomes the owner of the program and the key player, and then the international organization will support the local government. But it can't, what doesn't work is for outside organizations to come in and take control. They can come up with ideas, they have to pass it on and sell it to the local governments.
And then do you see, in your experience there, did you see this occurring? Obviously the most important stakeholder is the local people, and above them the local government, I would assume. And so if we're talking, is there this kind of self-realization in Lesotho with people of influence that, hey, what these outsiders are describing to us is maybe a good way to go? Is there that kind of ownership developing?
Yeah,
to
there's a lot of failures.
Okay.
There's a lot of failures, but there's also some wins. There's times that programs have worked. One of the biggest things that I saw when I was in Lesotho, and I thought it was kind of a pivotal moment within the progression of the AIDS pandemic within the country, and that was selling the country on the idea that it was valuable for people to know their status. So it's called VCT or VCCT, voluntary counseling and testing, or voluntary counseling. What was the second C for? Anyway, VCT, voluntary counseling and testing for people to know their status. And this was real successful. People bought into the idea, and it was the shift is that people can then start taking responsibility for their own health. This is in relationship to AIDS. Okay. If they're positive, they know they're positive, and they learn what they need to do to support their health, to maintain their health as long as possible. And then the bonus side would be is if they in fact test negative, they realize they're negative, and it gives them more energy and more reason to stay negative.
Focus on prevention or practice prevention.
So that was a real successful sell of the international community to the local government that I saw within Lesotho, and this was just during the 2004-2005.
And the types of ideas that the local people come up with worthwhile also? Do they have their own ideas of how to approach education and prevention and treatment? Is it?
Well, they certainly come up with a lot of ideas. They have ideas of their own, and it's negotiation. Because you can't come in and bowl over a local community. You have to go in and you negotiate with them, and it has to be give and take. You go in as an equal member, an equal voice within community meetings. And they have ideas, you post ideas, and a lot of the stuff that you say that says that doesn't work, that won't work in our society, that won't work because, and you have to listen to that.
Sure.
And you might still can try and sell them on the idea, but still the bottom line in that final decision is going to be the local community saying, yes, we're going to do this, or yes, no, we're not. So you're selling all the time, selling ideas.
And the global contribution that then comes to bear in a place like Lesotho, which is The population there is about what, 1.3 million? Or
Yeah,
somewhere in there.
under 2 million.
And other surrounding countries where there's such a high incidence, 30, 40% of the population now, 2005, may be HIV or AIDS positive. Is the global community stepping up to help these kinds of countries? Well, I know that President Bush and the current administration in 2003 designated that Peace Corps would provide 1,000 volunteers worldwide devoted just to this AIDS and HIV issue. It's kind of like a drop in the bucket in one sense. Is there other support that you're aware of and that you can share, identify for our viewers?
The money is there. At some point it seems like there's possibly more money than they can use effectively. It's this infrastructure to be able to utilize money effectively within these small countries, and some of the countries do it well, other ones don't. Lesotho was in the group of countries that was excluded from President Bush's AIDS money because they designated Lesotho as one of the countries that did not have the infrastructure in place to be able to use monies effectively. So, and it's a decision you have to make. If that infrastructure isn't there, then the money just gets squandered.
And what would be the infrastructure exactly?
Well, the infrastructure
some aspects of it.
Yeah, it's the coordination and what it's government, it's the local government.
Okay.
How if they have infrastructure in place to use the funds effectively, if they have good enough ties with their health department to use those funds effectively. So that would be through counseling centers, testing centers for testing for HIV and AIDS, drug distribution centers, educational programs that are going out to educate the public, means of condom distribution. A lot of different things. This is just AIDS related, but then a different set of needs you could also find for dealing with orphans.
Yeah. I'd like to kind of look at the other side of the question. One of the three general purposes of the Peace Corps is to allow Americans to show people in another country that we care about them and that the American way is one way to live, and the flip side of that is to bring back the experience from the host country to America, to our home in America, and share with our friends and family and community what we learned in this country. Is there something that is that aspect of the communication working? We're going there telling them here's some good ideas. Are we bringing anything back to the United States to share about AIDS and about the pandemic? Is there good news to bring back? Is there a lighter side? Anything along those?
Well, I think the Peace Corps.
Bunch of questions.
Yeah, I think the Peace Corps program is unique, and especially in the way that the training and everything is done for the volunteers before they go into country. There's a lot of international. Or a lot of other countries that have volunteers they place in countries. But Peace Corps is unique in the amount of training that you get to go into countries. So, and also that they put people living at the community level, the local level. There's no other organization that does that on an international level. Peace Corps is the only one. So that part of the Peace Corps is very, very effective. And this program, is that third mandate, sharing, the cultures of other countries with Americans at home, and I think it's programs like this that start to fulfill that third mandate, and I think it's just as important as going and volunteering. I think it's important to try and people are afraid of things that they don't know about.
Right.
So it's real easy to be afraid of foreigners. Easy to be afraid of people that live in Africa or people that live other places. It's easy to be afraid of them because you don't know anything about them. So our job as Return Peace Corps volunteers, we can educate people of America about, these different cultures, they are people. They just
Yes.
live in a different place. They have different customs. They have different traditions.
Mhm.
But I live in a family. I can move into a family situation in Africa, and it's no different. The love and passion in this family is no different than you or I experience in our families growing up here.
These are universal values, universal emotions, and we don't want it to become universal tragedies, obviously, of the orphan problem that you've been working with so well and so actively is something that very well could spread if we're not careful, is my belief.
Yes.
And we can't ignore it too long. Well, we just have a minute or so left, and I'd like to ask you about some of the, you have some shirts here on our table that describe some things. We've got about 1 minute to review them, if you would, please.
The shirt I have on is a traditional Lesotho shirt called Masweshwe.
Masweshwe.
Yeah, and the women also have full dresses that are made in a similar fashion. This is a relatively plain shirt, but some of them get a little bit more ornate. Mm-hmm. So this is just a traditional men's shirt in Lesotho. Some of the activities, again, the educational activities are everywhere. So it's not unusual at all. You see shirts a lot. Yeah. Of different types of AIDS activities. This one is for an education program by Perry High School in Tabatseka.
Okay. Well, Doug, we thank you very much for being here today and continuing our message, bringing the world home to America. And we appreciate the work that you are doing back here in Honolulu with the program Bring the World Home. We hope that you'll join us again next week when we'll have an opportunity to share the story and look into the experiences of a returned Peace Corps volunteer from someplace around the world. Aloha now. Good night.